AEW Dynamite just suffered its worst rating ever in its own time slot. We're going to tell you exactly what the hell is going on, how this is reportedly going to impact AEW's television negotiations with Warner Brothers Discovery, and what it means for the second biggest company in all of professional wrestling. We're going to break it down right here, youtube.com/Real Take Wrestling. Be sure to smash that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released. One of the big things that people have been talking about recently in wrestling are ratings, and they are, honestly, as a fan, one of my least favorite things to talk about, because I would much rather talk about the other things that have to do with the business or just the storylines in general. But this is very critical to both WWE and AEW's business, which is why it is worth noting and worth talking about. But one of the big things people have been focusing on have been AEW's ratings, and their ratings have really hit a tough time, is a nice way of putting it. Another way of putting it is their ratings have been tanking, and this is a company that in 2023 was struggling to hit that 1 million bar. They did it a few times earlier in the year. They were not able to do it later on as the year progressed, and it has not gotten better as we head just halfway through 2024, and they just had a horrible rating. There's no other way to put it. WrestleNomics broke it all down. Guys, go support Brandon Thurston and the work over at WrestleNomics.com. That's where this graph is from, and this kind of shows you the breakdowns of all of these shows, Raw, SmackDown, etc. But it's in the top right corner, 502,000 viewers for AEW Dynamite. It registered in the 18 to 49 demographic a .16, and Dynamite is a show that has been averaging right around like a .21, a .24, like in that range as of recently. So a pretty big dip there. Other notes from WrestleNomics.com. This episode compared to last week, down 26%. Last week, they were at 681,000 viewers. This week, 503. Over the last few weeks, this is the last 4 weeks of trailing TV. They averaged 743,000, down 32% from the last 4 weeks average. And it is compared to even like last year, June 2023, this same show, or the same time of year, down 24% from June 2023 to June 2024. That is not good. And look, I want to first say this. This by no means that AEW is going out of business. I think there are going to be those who want that, those who are going to say that, and those who are going to feed you lies and bullshit, to be quite frankly, and say that. It is not true. The idea that AEW would go out of business at this point is just far-fetched, and I think wishful thinking for people who don't have the best intentions for pro wrestling. And that's fine. You can like WWE or whatever, but let's not pretend like that is a serious take. The flip side of that, and the real side of that, I should say, is that for AEW, this should at least be a bit of a wake-up call, because there's been like a lot of excuses kind of put out for this. There have been, it was Juneteenth. People are saying that people weren't home or whatever, and that's one of the reasons for a dip. However, you were talking about a nearly 200,000 viewer dip. That is not just a holiday dip at all. You also factor in, people have said like the Kendrick concert may have caused that. For me, and the way I see this is, I could see the Kendrick concert, which was a fantastic concert, by the way. I could see that, taking away viewers, because millions of people tuned into that while at the same time Dynamite was going on, and it was a big pop cultural thing that was happening. I could see how that could take away from the key demo number, but not the overall, and not by that much. That is just an insane drop, and I think everyone is kind of in the same camp in thinking that. We also, I should say, did hear from Warner Brothers Discovery and AEW about this, which I will read out in a second, but to put this in the context, guys, again, This is their worst rated show, the worst rated as far as television ratings go, ever in their original 8 p.m. Wednesday night time slot. There have been shows that were either preempted or that were moved around that had lower ratings, and that was like a few shows, a handful of them back in 2021. I believe it's the summer of 2021 when they were preempted for the NBA Finals. Outside of that, not even anywhere close to this bad. Like, this is a drastic drop. And don't let anyone tell you that it is not. It by no means they're going out of business. But the excuse that it was a holiday, the excuse that, Kendrick took away 200,000 viewers, I'm not too sure of. The holiday one, to me, has a little bit more merit to it because, merit, I mean, I think we have to kind of let it play out. If we go into next week and AEW does like 700,000 viewers, then I think that argument holds a little bit more weight. As of this moment, though, you look at everything else on television, or on cable at least, was not down to the extent that AEW was, not even close. It kind of takes the holiday / worse, they watching something else argument kind of out of it, right? So there's that aspect of it. And then there's the aspect of AEW's television deal. As of this recording, AEW and Warner Brothers Discovery are still negotiating their contract. They have been expected for a while to come to terms, but as we approach Forbidden Door, it is speculated that the television rights contract, the exclusive negotiating window for that contract, expires shortly after Forbidden Door. So with that in mind, the big question is, well, how is this horrible rating, 500,000 viewers, impacting Warner Brothers Discovery in the way they view All Elite Wrestling? Well, the good folks over at FightfulSelect.com, Sean Ross Sapp and company, did put out a report today, and here is an excerpt from that report. Here's the quote. Here's one of the quotes, When Fightful reached out to a WBD rep about the number and said, quote, just a very odd week in general and a confluence of stuff, Juneteenth holiday in the middle of the week. When does a midweek holiday ever happen in late spring / summer months? Another Warner Brothers source says this number does not affect the potential of a new AEW WBD deal. Neither WBD or AEW sources brought up the Kendrick concert or Kendrick broadcast Wednesday, but based on online speculation, it does seem like a key or at least minor reason. Sorry about that one, says Sean Ross Sapp. Don't be sorry about that. That was actually a pretty funny one. But again, guys, go over to FightfulSelect.com for the full report. There was also in that report noted that the lead-in for AEW Dynamite is different. And when you're talking about lead-ins, that is them talking about the show that airs before Dynamite. And usually, I think it's Big Bang Theory. Usually it is Big Bang Theory, and that gets them a couple 100,000. It was reported because the lead-in was significantly less. That may have impacted the lead-in viewers and people who were watching kind of into Dynamite or after they watched usually watch Big Bang Theory. So did that have something to do with it? I'm sure. But again, 200,000 viewers is a lot to drop, especially when we're talking about something like cable, which people are used to being tuned into week to week, right? And for a lot of people who watch Dynamite, this is a weekly routine. So that's where we stand there. As far as the TV deal, we heard that according to this FightfulSelect.com report, that a WBD source said that there is no impact on the negotiations between AEW and WBD. Now, I think there's a little bit of reading between the lines there as far as what that could mean. And I don't mean that as oh my God, they're lying to you. But look, if we go into next week and they're back to being 670 or 700,000, 800, if they're back to what they're normally at, then I think, anomaly, what have you, move on. If we get to next week and AEW is still putting up 500,000 viewers, then I think it's going to impact it a little bit. And if we get to the week after that and they're still at 500,000, then I think there's going to be kind of rumblings about, hey, what's going on here? Because this is a show that would consistently, as back as 2023, January of 2023, was having 1 million people tune into their show weekly. And now they are basically a wall at like 800,000. Something's going on. And I will get into what I think the culprit is overall, like as far as not just this specific rating, but overall what's happened to the AEW over the past year. But you also have to remember, for the way that these negotiations are done, a lot of time they are not necessarily looking at, how is everything going week to week. Obviously with wrestling, it's a little bit different. There is that's more of a emphasis, I guess, looking at that in that respect, but not in real time. When these negotiations are going on, they're usually looking at data over the last few quarters, right? Because that's kind of how this stuff is compiled. It's compiled through reports over quarters. So if they're looking at reports from Q1, Q2, whatever, then the data over the last couple of weeks is not really registered and not really being taken into account as far as this negotiation. So you have to factor that in, and you also have to factor in that, I think the stance that people in AEW are taking, the stance that people at Warner Brothers Discovery are taking, is that this was an anomaly. So if that is the case, then I doubt this will have much of an impact at all. I do expect, by the way, AEW to stay with Warner Brothers Discovery and to get a massive increase to what they're getting now. Again, they are not getting paid an insane amount of money right now. It was, what it was, at 175 over 4 years. That for what they're doing, that is, they are outperforming that contract by leaps and bounds. So we'll see where they go from here as far as their negotiations. Obviously, that window is closing over the next couple of weeks. But let's talk about AEW and kind of the issues that they have had. So I think when the ratings drop by this amount, you have to look at it past okay, what else is on TV? What else is going on in the world? You have to look at it what is AEW doing differently than what they were doing before, or how is the company different? And for me, it's 3 major things. Number one, AEW right now is it's just been around for a while now. It's been around 5 years. When it first started, it was a very cool new thing that people hadn't experienced before. And I'm not saying that AEW is a fad, but I think a lot of the early buzz and a lot of the early people who tuned in, to Dynamite and tuned into AEW, for them, it may have been a fad. And it may have been this is just such an epic thing that we need to be a part of. And over time, those fans just go away. I know people who used to watch AEW all the time when it was new, and then they slowly just stopped watching. And it has nothing, it's less about whether or not they like wrestling. It's just it became kind of what it is. It's AEW, that's cool, but the awe, the mystique, the pomp and circumstance around it kind of faded over time. And over time, you're going to lose some people like that. And that's always going to happen whenever you have a new venture like that. The second thing, right, is that AEW originally started out of WWE being a horribly booked company. And a lot of AEW's early success can be contributed to the fact that their booking was competent at a time where WWE's was fundamentally not. Storyline-wise, creative-wise, WWE was in the gutter. In 2019, 2020, 2021, those last few years of Vince McMahon were some of the worst booked weeks and shows of wrestling television I have ever seen. I would argue, actually, 2019 was probably the worst booked year of professional wrestling in WWE that I've ever seen. So when you have this alternative that is producing, competent television, that is producing storylines that make sense, that you can get invested in, that does feel new, you are going to gravitate towards that. And then in 2022, obviously Triple H came in and the booking for WWE became competent. And when you're an industry leader, and even that small of a change can have a massive impact, right? Because take it like this. If you're a fan of the MCU, we all know they kind of jumped the shark a while ago, but the second they get back to competent storytelling and they get away from probably like this multiverse stuff, there's going to be a lot of people who come back. There's going to be a lot of people who are really interested in it more than I think are right now. That is what WWE is. They are the industry leader. They are Disney. So for them, they only have to do a little bit of work to get that much reward. And that is not me. That is not an indictment of WWE TV. I think they have some amazing things happening on TV, and they have some big stars, and it feels big. And it is bigger. It is a bigger wrestling company. It's a bigger show. They have more pomp and circumstance. And for AEW, like, that is something that they at this point cannot compete with. So you have those two factors that I think have really weighed down over time. And then you have the biggest thing I think that AEW is in control of, and that is their booking. The way that AEW structures and has structured both Collision and Dynamite are not conducive to high ratings, in my view. If you ignore this past week, because I think this past week's Dynamite was actually probably the perfect way for them to book a Dynamite and structure it to keep people engaged. And before you say, well, why was the rating so bad? The rating for this Dynamite wasn't, set in because of what was happening during this show. The rating for this Dynamite was likely determined in the weeks leading up, right? Because we saw a steady decline in the ratings for Dynamite over the last number of weeks, right? And then we have this big rating loss. That means that the booking over the past little while has like weighed on the fans. So the people who didn't tune in here, they weren't gonna tune in because they heard oh my god, AEW is putting on a great show. They just weren't gonna tune in because they kind of have saw the trajectory. This week did have a different feel to it, and I think if you look at what they did right, it is fundamentally opposite of what they have been doing, because they've had storylines that needle throughout the night. They have stars that needle throughout the night and that show up at different points in the show. It makes it feel important. It makes it feel like must-watch TV. And you sprinkle in a little bit of kind of mystique with the Forbidden Door stuff. And also you promote matches and build matches up in the weeks leading up to it and then weeks following. And, promote the next week's Dynamite, promote Collision. That is what they should be doing, and it's what they got away from. The biggest thing that AEW can control that has impacted their decline in ratings has been their inconsistent structure of Dynamite. Because some weeks it'll just be, let's book for the sickos. And which I love. I'm a sicko at heart. I love Ultimo Guerrero and Kazuchika Okada. That is a match made for me. And I'd likely no one else, right? And that's fine. They should have that. But alongside that, you also need to be more consistent and more focused with your storytelling, more focused with who's on what brand, and also highlighting your biggest stars throughout your show. You can't just have you can't just rely on one MJF segment. You have to have MJF show up at least twice. It is what it is. And they did that this week. They did it with Will Ospreay. They showed Swerve Strickland, a few times. That is what they should be doing. And if they continue with that, I think if they keep on booking the way they did this past week, I think ratings will get better over time. But they can't go back to what they were doing basically the latter part of 2023 into 2024, especially with Collision. Collision's its own problem. I think that show has a lot of potential. It is what it is. That's a whole different video, but that's what I think. I know that there are going to be many people who disagree. I'm sure that you probably do. Let me know in the comment section why you disagree, what you think, how you think AEW can fix these low ratings. And if you think that they're going to get a massive contract, let me know in the comment section. Also, be sure, if you haven't already done so, to smash that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released. Until next time, I'm Omer Q for Real Take Wrestling. Be happy, be healthy, and as always, keep it real.